When you play the Game of Thrones, you
Subscribe and like.
or you die. There is no middle ground.
All right, hello YouTube. Welcome back to the Grease Comedy YouTube channel. Today's video, we are going to be talking about Daenerys Targaryen in Winds of Winter and taking your guys' questions and or topics that you guys wanted to talk about. So if you do want to be part of these videos, follow the Instagram. It is in the description, or just look out for the community posts by subscribing as I post them before I do these videos. And also, a last thank you to my Patreons and members that support me on this channel. I appreciate you guys. Also, if you did want to become one, you do get these videos early and all of that. So let's get into Daenerys Targaryen in Winds of Winter. Ashley's question was, what do you think of the possibility that Dany's 3 forecasted betrayals will all be committed by women? She seems to have an implicit trust in women, always seeing the good but not the bad. Seems like just the thing George would exploit in a character. Personally, I think the betrayal for gold was her friend Doria, and the betrayal for blood will be the Green Grace. The third for love, I don't know just yet. Can't wait to hear your thoughts. So, I will say, Ashley, I do think this is one of the few times that you got the show mixed up with the book, because the Doria stuff doesn't really happen in Clash of Kings. That's more of a season 2 thing that ends up happening. So that one doesn't really fit, but I do agree the Green Grace definitely could be a betrayal for blood. Dany is a character that is someone that really trusts women, like how you talked about it. And a part of that is she's not experienced with having a mother figure or a woman that could be seen as a mother figure type, right? Think about all the people that are always around her, people that are in power and controlling her, telling her what to do. It is usually men. Think about her living with Viserys earlier on. She gets taken in by Illyrio. She gets married to Drogo. She's always in a situation where she never has an ability to connect with women. And so she sees them as being more trustworthy, which I think is definitely understandable. I think you tend to trust, your gender more than you do the other one, right? So if you're a male, you tend to trust, other males more than you do women, right? Because you probably know how men think more than you do women. And so I definitely like your idea here, but the problem I come to is, who is that other woman that would be close enough to Dany that she would consider it a betrayal? And so you kind of have to look to the future of the story and consider, okay, who is Dany going to be interacting with that's a woman that's going to have a position in which she can betray Dany? So at the current moment, the Green Grace is definitely a good option. I think another one that, this would be a heartbreaking one, but there's a situation in which, think about the closest female character to Dany, and that's Missandei. Could Missandei betray Dany for love or something like that? I don't know, right? The problem with Missandei is she's much younger, right? She's not like the Missandei of the show. But, Missandei does have brothers that are in the Unsullied. Maybe there's a situation in which Missandei thinks Dany is doing things wrong and betrays her. Again, it is difficult, and I'm not sure I think that this will actually pan out because there's just not a lot of women characters around Dany at this point. But I do like your idea, Ashley. Number 2 comes from McLean, and you have a couple of topics, so let's take them all one at a time. Do you think Dany will lead the Dothraki to Westeros? It's kind of glossed over in the show, but the effects of bringing an entire people like the Dothraki over to Westeros would be catastrophic. They'd either all die or convince the population to hate her. So, yeah, I think you're in a rough spot if you're Dany and you want to bring the Dothraki over. I think she is going to, right? That's going to fulfill kind of her book 1 arc, right? Where in book 1, she's trying to get Drogo to get the Dothraki to come over, and it doesn't end up happening. I think Dany will. She will make them part of her Khalasar. And so I think the detriment is going to be, how does she deal with the Dothraki who have never crossed the sea? How is she going to deal with that, right? There's going to be a lot of disease. There's going to be a lot of seasickness. There's going to be a lot of issues that are going to come with that. So the question for Dany is going to be, do the benefits outweigh the negatives, right? Because the benefits are, you're going to have a very massive army. The problem is going to be, how do you feed that army, right? How do you command that army? They can be very undisciplined, as Barristan will kind of talk about. As Barristan, I think, will really think about and be that person that tells her that if he is still alive. So you think about that. Then you also think about the idea of how does Dany kind of deal with the way that the rest of Westeros is going to react to her bringing over this, in a lot of ways, in their minds, a savage army. Think about the way Viserys thinks about the Dothraki. that's not an uncommon sentiment towards the Dothraki in Westeros, right? Like, that's not something that, oh, Viserys is just a vicious idiot like usual. No, like that's pretty common thinking about the Dothraki. Yes, they can be fearsome and deadly, but they are really just savages. That's what Westeros kind of thinks about them. And so bringing that over is a detriment, I think, in a lot of ways to Dany, but I do think she will do it. Good question, by the way. If it happens, how do you think Barristan's death will impact her? Start of the Mad Queen arc. He's pretty much the closest thing to family she has, like a caring uncle, only interested in protecting her. So I imagine it could have... Yeah, so this right here is why I think Barristan should stay alive in the story, at least until he comes over to Westeros, or she comes over to Westeros, because in a lot of ways, I don't know if I believe Dany is going to go mad. I think that's something that I wanted to happen in the show, and because of the way the show did it, I don't like it as much in the book anymore. But if you're going to have something that's going to make her challenge her own beliefs and really have some growth with the character, losing Barristan, and especially the way that she could lose Barristan, whether that's because of some backhanded tactics or whether that's in battle or whatnot, Barristan represents a person that has only her interests at heart, right? He is not someone that's conniving, who is trying to gain power, all these things. He is someone that genuinely supports her. And so Barristan, in a lot of ways, will represent a lot of the good parts of Dany. And losing him could be detrimental. She could spiral out of control and lean into some of her more of her Targaryen heritage, which being more hot-headed and things like Rhaenyra. I think Dany and Rhaenyra could have a lot of similarities when it comes to loss and the way they deal with it. Your next question is Dragonbinder. Who gets a win out of it? Will Euron control Viserion and Rhaegal, or will Victarion's plan actually work? Or from a plot perspective, was the horn just brought to Slaver's Bay so Dany could use it to actually control the dragons? Not really sure how that plays out, but I'm thinking it's like Sam and the Hormonal of Winter going to Old Town for a reason. We'll find out in Winds. Yeah, I think Dragonbinder is the hardest thing to predict in Winds of Winter in terms of Dany's storyline, because it could go in a number of ways. I do think, though, it makes sense for Dragonbinder to be used to at least strip Dany of one of her dragons. A question that I got that we're going to talk about later on is Dany going to lose a dragon? And I think she has to. She cannot come over with 3 dragons. It's just going to be too overpowered. How is she going to be stopped? And maybe that's the point. Maybe George wants it to be a huge nod to Aegon and just has Dany rolling Westeros, but I just don't find that to be as compelling. We've already had that story with Aegon the Conqueror. And so I think George is going to have a twist to it. And I think part of that could be, okay, Dragonbinder is something that's used for maybe this dragon to maybe not go to Euron directly, but to go to Victarion or something like that. Like, I think the biggest issue I have with Dragonbinder is I think Euron already is doing too much in terms of magic stuff. Like, he's trying to awaken Krakens and things, that if you give him a dragon, it just feels like too much. And so what is Dragonbinder's point? Like, is it gonna go to Victarion? I'm not sure. That's one of my biggest things I have questions with. But lastly, who does Dany leave in charge of Meereen when she goes west? Another thing basically glossed over in the show, but in the books, the second her forces are gone, the Slavers will retake the city and undo her changes. How could she possibly hope to keep her change permanent? Yeah, this is another part that I think makes Dany so difficult to write. How do you make sure your rulership stays after you're gone? Now, part of that is going to be Dany is going to break a lot of the Slavers' forces, so they're going to be heavily weakened, and so I think that'll give Dany a little bit of confidence to leave. But I do think, a theory that I really do think is interesting is if Hizdahr actually does stay in power. He is someone that seems like he understands the politics of Meereen. He is someone that would try to, I think, keep Dany's policies in line, but having his own spin on them and being able to keep peace better than Dany would be able to. He is a native of Meereen as well. So I think Hizdahr does make a lot of sense, because I don't think Hizdahr is an actual Sons of the Harpy member. He's not the leader or anything. If anything, I would say he's more like a figurehead type character, but I don't know if that's the truth either. I think Hizdahr could easily be getting like kind of framed or the short end of the stick. Kit then asks, what do you think Dany's reaction to Moqorro and the R'hllorys would be? How do you think she will handle the possible clash of Sparrows and R'hllorys if she takes them with her to Westeros? So again, I think Dany is going to accept like their support, right? I think Dany, the way she's going to view it is she's going to view it as freedom of religion kind of for all. And these people are going to be telling Dany that in a lot of ways, she's the Azor Ahai. She's basically the chosen one. Dany's not going to turn that down. That's going to be great for manipulating the people in Essos. But what she's not going to realize, or maybe she even does realize this, is what damage that's going to cause. It's going to continue to make her look like an outsider, as this, again, foreigner, right? Think about how Stannis is viewed because of Mel. That's going to be even more amplified with Dany having Moqorro and even more of the R'hllor priests. So I do think there could be some issues there. But I think another thing you think about with young Griff, why would the Sparrows maybe go with young Griff and accept him more than they would Dany? Because young Griff is not going to come over with the R'hllorist, right? Young Griff will be accepted more than I think Dany will because of this exact issue. And it's why young Griff could have the backing of the High Sparrow if he's still alive at this point, or the Sparrows that are remaining. If young Griff even allows them to keep being armed, he could gain that support because of what Dany will be doing. Caesar of Rome then says, do you think she will lose a dragon? Yeah, I talked about this a little bit, but I think she has to. Right? At this point, she's just too overpowered, and I think this is something that the show really struggled with. How do you bring a character like Dany and make the war interesting? Because in reality, with 3 dragons, she should be able to just roll through the kingdoms easily. And so the show struggled with convoluted ways to make it seem more balanced and all these things, and ridding Dany of her allies. So I think George is going to play a lot around Dany, her morality. What decisions does she believe she can do that are right or wrong? Having Tyrion and Barristan be characters that really deal with that issue exactly. And also looking at, okay, what happens if she loses a dragon? What if, she's not able to tame her dragons, and maybe young Griff is able to tame one of her dragons, given he will have probably Targaryen blood. Whether he's a Blackfire or a Targaryen, it does not matter. He will still have that dragon blood. It's similar to like the dragon seeds during the Dance of Dragons time period. So again, I think she will. I think she has to, for the story to continue to kind of make sense. Matt then asks, will she ditch Dario like she did in the show? Fingers crossed. I think she will. I think Dany has to realize, and she's already realizing it, right, that Dario is no fit guy for her in terms of a marriage partner or somebody she should be sleeping with. She recognized that. She's just not able to end the relationship, really. And so I think part of it is going to be that she's going to realize that. She's going to get advice from Tyrion and Barristan to leave him behind. And another part of that is I think herself. It's going to be kind of that end of that arc of she can't really have Dario around her anymore. Maz asks, do you think Dany will ever make it to Braavos and realize there are no lemon trees there? Unrelated, I just thought of the parallels between Daenerys and Arya, a daughter of a fallen house who went into exile and reinvented themselves. Yeah, the two have a very similar in terms of that, right? Also being very strong female characters, characters that do not fit the normal description of a female in this world. Daenerys is a queen, she's a dragon rider. Arya being this faceless man or this tomboyish character. They have a lot of similarities. But going to your actual question, Dany is interesting because will we see her in Braavos? You would love to think that we will at some point, but there's just so many places. And so if she does ever make it to Braavos, the problem with this is going to be, I think that the lemon trees were able to be there, but just in the Sea Lord of Braavos' house. And so will she realize that, or will she have more questions about her home and her memories of it? That's a great idea. But I do think one of the main themes we're going to think with Dany is home. That's the thing that's constantly referenced with Dany throughout all of her books that she's in. And she's going to be struggling with trying to figure out what is her home. When she gets to Westeros, she's going to be viewed as an outsider, someone that does not belong. And so she's going to have to deal with that. This place that she's imagined as her home all these years is really foreign to her. She doesn't remember these places. She's only heard stories about them. It's not really a home. And the people of Westeros are not going to really want her anyway. So I find the idea of Dany and home to be very interesting. Next, Kai brings up, not often brought up, but even if she doesn't go crazy and burn down King's Landing, her Dothraki are still going to kill a lot of people and wreak havoc in Westeros, so people will probably hate her regardless. Yeah, again, we've talked about it pretty much in this entire video about situations in which Dany is going to be feeling like an outsider. All of Westeros is not going to like what she's going to be doing, bringing over the Dothraki, bringing over the Unsullied, having dragons, all of these things that make her so foreign to them. Some people are not going to want the dragons and Daenerys to come back. Think about a lot of the hardships that a lot of families would have gone through during the Targaryen time period. And so you look at this character that, yes, regardless if she doesn't go mad, she's going to be viewed as the Mad Queen's daughter, right? That's how she's going to be viewed. And you're completely right. War is going to bring carnage. That's what Feast for Crows really is all about, and bringing the Dothraki over. A group of people almost known for this exact type of warfare of killing innocents, enslaving them, things like that. Enslaving these people, and whether that's, you know, trading them or whatever, they're going to be seen as very barbaric to the people of Westeros. But yes, a great idea, Kai. Avery brings up, do you think Dany will end up going mad? I think this is a tough question, because I think Dany, by a lot of Westeros, could be viewed as mad already. I think parts of the show had certain things right on that idea. Like, think about from an outsider's point of view, and you hear that Dany allowed her brother to be killed by the Dothraki in a very brutal fashion. Think about the stories you're going to hear about Dany basically hanging up all these masters because of, and not hearing what they did into why Dany did that. Right? If you think about the stories that are going to be told of the dragons and what Dany does with them, she's going to be viewed probably as mad, given her father also was the Mad King. And so Dany, I think from the viewing point of it, will already be viewed as mad by a good amount of people. But she herself, will she go mad? And I think it's definitely possible. I think George has laid a lot of that foundation, set up things that could make her go off the edge. But I'd like to think she's not going to go mad. I'd like to think that she's going to feel very conflicted. I feel like she's going to be someone like Rhaenyra towards the end of her life, where she feels like she's lost so much in her life because of her actions and things that she's done, as well as, you know, what the Greens do. And so I think she will become more like that. Well, she'll become more spiteful, more angry, more prone to lashing out. I don't know if I would go as far as saying mad, though. Larissa, one of my great members, says, do you think Dany will give her life defending everyone from the White Walkers? I definitely think it's possible, right? Think about all we've talked about with Dany. I think Dany could be in a situation which she does some bad actions, whether that's because she intended to do so, or whether it was an accident or whatnot. She will see, I think, some of her actions, and she will give her life defending the White Walkers. I think that's a great story for Dany, to be kind of this, not exactly the Azor Ahai, but part of the Azor Ahai prophecy, giving her life to defend the world, even when the world, it seems like, has turned her back on her and her family. I think that would be a really nice way to end her story, and I really do like that idea. But the last topic we have is from Chrissy. As always, I'd like to know what you think a character's outcome will be by the end of Winds, or their character arc in general. I think by the end of Winds of Winter, Dany's character arc is basically going to be about, she needs to be in Westeros, or at least on her way, like sailing from, like, say, Pentos to Dragonstone, and then maybe the next book we pick up with her landing on Dragonstone. She has to do that. And so that's one of the biggest issues I think George R.R. Martin faces, is how do you get there? And so a lot of her journeying through this next book is going to be dealing with the Dothraki stuff, getting them to fall in line with her. She's going to be tested on how far she will go, right? That's kind of what A Dance with Dragons was about. How far will she go to end something? How far will she go to get her way and the things that she wants to happen? Where will she bend and things like that? And so a lot of it's going to be about that kind of journey. But then you have the next half of the book, which is going to be about basically ending the Marine plot and getting from place to place to eventually get to Westeros. And I think Dany is set up to be the character with the most POVs in Winds of Winter. I don't know if that's a hot take, but I think she should have the most POVs in the next book, just based upon what she has to do. And so by the end of Winds of Winter, I think she's going to be either on Dragonstone, basically setting foot on the first time, like maybe be one of these things where it's like they had finally gotten back to Westeros, her home, as she steps on the beaches of Dragonstone, or something like that, right? It's going to be something like that to end out her story in Winds of Winter. But thank you guys all for submitting questions. I really loved a lot of these. We kind of went pretty narratively through what I think Dany is going to be going through in Winds of Winter. A lot of awesome discussion points. So thank you guys for all participating, and I'll see you guys all in the next one. Bye, guys.